Welcome back, sleepyheads, to another episode of Sleepy Aliens Perspective. I am your host, H. Leigh. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. So tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about the Brittney Griner situation and what that situation is teaching not only the general public, but the warning that it gives for many artists out there. So for me personally, I quit smoking weed, and I did that mainly for, the fact that my psychic abilities have been increasing, and that in turn, if when I was smoking, was creating more symptoms of anxiety and paranoia. And that's something that I had never really experienced with weed, but tapering that down to balance my mental health while I'm expanding my psychic abilities is really important for me. So that was my main reason for smoking weed. But the main reason too was also realizing that, my future is going to entail me traveling to different countries and different places in relation to my career and my artistry. And one thing I don't want to be worried about or focused on is where I'll get my weed, who can help me get my weed, how will I manage my withdrawal symptoms, how bad will they be, will I be able to perform, will I be able to do these public engagements. And this is so important because artists have to have power. I mean, in general, I think everyone has to have power over outside objects, material, substances, and items, and depending on those things to help us perform, create, to relax, because truly that power rests in our minds. And I know a lot of people, of course, do use marijuana for medicinal purposes, and this is coming from someone who started using marijuana to help with my autoimmune disorder. And for a long time, it was really good for me and it helped. But eventually, as I removed dairy and gluten and consumed less sugar, consumed less meat, and watched my salt intakes, and went to therapy, healed my traumas, worked on my breathing, worked on just believing that I could heal my body and manage my own pain, a lot of those symptoms of my autoimmune disorder diminished. I do experience it more if I'm overexhausting myself or overworking myself, but in general, it's not as bad as it used to be because I was healing myself in all the ways that was causing all of those disorders and pain to manifest in my body, right? Because those physical and mental ailments come from spiritual blockages, energetic blockages, our traumas, our perceptions, things we haven't processed, things we haven't accepted in ourselves. So me recognizing that was saying, yes, not only do I want to be this independent person who can take care of herself, but I want to be independent from substances. I want to make sure that when I'm going abroad, not only do I not have to even worry about needing weed or anything else, but I also don't have to worry about people trying to set me up because, hey, they know Heaven's a heavy weed user. And I know people are like, this doesn't happen, but some people do get set up. And you don't know if someone is going to try to set you up, slip something in your bag, get you into trouble. So to make yourself less vulnerable to all of those things, to protect your career and your livelihood, it's so important that you gain power over substance use. But I want to give some real examples of artists who have gotten busted for marijuana. And this is just marijuana. It's not cocaine, it's not heroin. This is that innocent drug that is becoming more acceptable in America and widely used. But at the same time, we also have to think about the fact that any substance that is promoted or proliferated in our country can be used against us. Just like sugar, just like milk, just like alcohol, all of those things can bring out negative impacts in our society and the way that we process, heal, and go about our daily lives and manage, our stressors, because we've become so dependent on these outside substances, we've forgotten how to systematically relax our own bodies. We've forgotten how to use our own breath to create our own highs, right? We have detached from our ability to create all of that ourselves because our body was gifted with the ability to heal itself, to manage all those pains, to manage anxiety, and of course I know that, weed can be helpful, and if you can't fully quit, at least have the power to go a month without it and use other coping mechanisms, whether, that be diet, exercise, yoga, acupuncture, massages, therapy, taking different regular, natural, legal, herbal substances, whether that be like turmeric or bamboo powder or lavender oil capsules. There's a lot of alternatives out there that can bring you back to a state of physical balance without putting you in a social state of desperation and jeopardy, because from the list that I'm about to share with you, you're going to see that a lot of artists, a lot of people will put everything at risk just to have the substance with them, just to be able to use weed. And so honestly, this list, I probably could have spent another hour collecting names. I probably could have added, maybe like 10 politicians, a couple other dozen actors on this list, but it's pretty long as it is, but it's mainly musicians, and there's a few actors on here. So in 1930, Louis Armstrong was busted in California for marijuana, and he received a $1,000 fine. 1968, John Lennon, Eric Clapton, and George Harrison. And they were not together. These were just all separate incidents within the same year. They were all busted for weed. In 1970, Bill Murray smuggled a lot of weed. He got busted for that. In 1976, David Bowie and Iggy Pop were busted in New York, and they almost received felony charges, but they were eventually dropped. In 1977, Bob Marley was in London, and he was arrested and fined. But I also want you to think, because a lot of these stories that I looked up, a lot of these were like drug raids, like police busting into hotels or houses, because what's known to the public is that these artists are marijuana users. It's easy to get them in trouble. It's easy to set them up, and they become so vulnerable because whether they're making money or, being on the news for getting busted for something, their fame can be used against them, and the media and these entertainment companies, it benefits them whether the artist is performing or getting busted for something. It still can generate money for them. So in their mind, they don't really care, but an artist puts their whole livelihood at risk. So in 1980, Paul McCartney was busted. In 1999, Chuck Berry was busted for weed, and he was even court ordered to make a donation to a hospital. In 1996, Woody Harrelson was busted in Kentucky, which, damn, thank God he didn't go to Kentucky prison. That really would have sucked. In 1996, Lil' Kim was busted for weed, and I believe that was a home raid. So again, these vulnerabilities, they know, oh, that's that artist, pull them over. I bet there's weed in there, we'll bust them right now, In 1998, Snoop Dogg. In the year 2000, Whitney Houston. In 2001, American Idol star Bo Bice was busted. In 2004, Macaulay Culkin was busted. In 2006, Haley Joel Osment was busted. And these are going to be several people, different incidents, all in the year 2007. Misha Barton, Dawn Wells from Gilligan's Island, which is crazy. Especially like bust an old person. I'll get like just leave them alone, right? Amy Winehouse. In 2019, DaBaby. I really hate saying his name. I just don't like it. DaBaby. It just it's not good. In 2020, Dave East, as well as Playboy Cardi, again, separate incidents, but the same year. In 2018, again, separate incidents, same year, Kodak Black and Ty Dolla $ign. And I have a few more. Because honestly, like I said, like I could have added so many other names to this list. In 2010, we have Wiz Khalifa. In 2008, we have Rick Ross. In 2011, Soulja Boy. 2000, DMX. 2010, Juvenile. 2004, Jadakiss. 2007, both Method Man and Lil Wayne, separate incidents, but same year. 2010, again, same year, separate incidents, Kareem Burke and Bret Michaels. So again, I could have continued to find different names to add to that list, but what I'm trying to prove here is that weed makes artists very vulnerable. And I think this Brittney Griner situation is a warning for artists to find other ways to cope with their anxiety and to increase their healing power and their capacity to relieve their own pains and anxieties. And it's almost scary when you think about it, because I think police forces, like once an artist enters a country, especially if they're famous, they're already gonna have eyes on them. They're already gonna have police trailing them. And so what if you just see a policeman who's hired to be, you know, a security person at a concert or an event, and they see one drug use, so they send one tip to their police station and they say, hey, pretty sure I spotted something. You might want to pull them over, pull their tour bus over, or catch them before they get in their flight, check their bags. That's gonna happen. That person's gonna get busted. And now they may go to jail, their livelihood's at stake, or in Brittney's situation, you're being sentenced to 9 years in a Russian prison, and we don't know when she'll come home exactly. It's sad, it's scary, and I think this is such a wake-up call for a lot of people. And after hearing this story today, I'm grateful that I stopped smoking, because I don't want to put myself in that situation. And I want to make sure, so if anybody knows, if I'm ever in a different country doing something and I get busted for weed, just know that it was planted, because I stopped smoking weed because I know better, and I'm not going to put myself in that situation. And before I go, I do want to touch on the fact that I think in indigenous cultures and spiritual ceremonies, weed is a beautiful thing, and it can really enhance your connection to the spirit realm, and it can increase your creativity capacity. But I think what I am learning is that your psychic abilities, they don't need a substance to increase them. This is, again, not relying on the outside sources for protection or enhancement, and learning that you can do all of that in your mind. And that's what I've been training my mind to do, slowly, incrementally, you know, as far as healing myself and calming myself and expanding my consciousness and expanding my psychic abilities. And I'll give you an example. So last fall, I got a tooth pulled, and I tell you, I've been testing my ability to heal myself for quite some time, and I've been doing different stages of this. And even when I had C19, I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't use any of heavy, like, over-the-counter, you know, drugs or medicinal things to help me. I used natural things, and I used my mind to heal my body. And so when I got this tooth pulled, I told the doctor, I was like, I don't want any pain pills. I don't want any ibuprofen. Like, don't write me a prescription for anything. She honestly, like, looked at me like I was fucking crazy, and she was like, are you sure? She was like, I don't really feel comfortable doing this. And I told her, I've been training my brain to, like, heal my body and know that my body can heal itself. So I didn't use anything. I had some arnica tablets, and I had some natural essential oils and things I used to help rinse my mouth and like keep it clear of bacteria. But other than that, I used my mind to heal my body and to trust that my body would heal itself. Just like you trust that, a cut on your finger is going to heal. I remember when I got my IUD, I had all of my girlfriends telling me it's going to be painful, don't do it, do you need me to pick you up? And I remember I told my friend Alex, I was like, don't pick me up, I'll be fine. So I walked to my appointment, and it was definitely like painful, of course, when it was inserted, but I had really trained my brain and my body to know that it was going to be okay, that we were going to be fine, that everything was going to, come together, and we weren't going to have any sort of, malfunctions or side effects or anything like that. But the worst part was like when you get out of the appointment, you can't use a tampon, because they tell you it's better if you're on your periods to get it inserted so that there's, moisture in there. So I wasn't able to use a tampon, and the doctor was like, she handed me a pad, and I hadn't used a pad in so long. And I'll be honest, I have so much middle school trauma with like periods and pads that I was just like, fuck. So I actually called my friend Alex, and I was like, actually, I would use that. Can I get that ride? Because I don't know how to walk in a pad anymore. And they picked me up, and I went home, and I like elevated my legs. I had some pizza, and I just did some deep breathing, and I kept telling my brain, everything's gonna be fine. We're healing ourselves. This IUD insertion is going to go perfectly well. We're not going to have any like issues or side effects. And it worked. And later that day, I went on a bike ride, and I met up with some girlfriends downtown, and I hung out with them for a little bit, and I haven't had any major issues with my IUD since then. So I really do believe that it's possible to heal your body. And in terms of like my autoimmune disease, I have totally learned to manage my pain symptoms naturally. And I think now the next stage for me is not depending on weed to manage those symptoms. And again, trusting my body to heal itself and developing my other natural coping mechanisms to bring my body back to a state of balance. And in terms of like psychic abilities, like I was saying, weed has been great for ceremonies and rituals, but I think there was a period in my life where I was young and I was going to parties and I was going out, it's like right when I turned 21 was mainly when I started smoking a lot. But then when I hit like 26, 27, I think that's when weed became a self-medicating substance for me. And a lot of that was stemming from when I worked at Northern Arizona University, and I went through sexual harassment, racism, and discrimination. All the while I'm trying to provide for myself, build a career, make a name for myself, and create security in my life. So I self-medicated a lot to get through that. And I think that's when weed became less about having fun, connecting with people, having deep conversations, and more about just needing to zone out, forget about all those stressors, and just medicate all that pain away, but depending on weed to do that for me. So that's a huge aspect of it as well. But with psychic abilities, what I'm learning is that the power of your mind is so strong, and at some point weed can interfere with that development and cause distortion with your perception and your ability to read energy, to process energy. So I was noticing that in the past few weeks, as I was able to gain more psychic awareness, and I was also becoming more sensitive to energy. I was also picking up on more things that I've never picked up on. I was having more supernatural experiences. And to protect my mental health, I think it's best, of course, if I stop smoking weed so that all of those experiences and me processing energy and interpreting energy can be clear, and I can be cognizant of what it is and not have you know, this enhancement of weed, you know, over expanding my perception of what I'm experiencing to the point where now I'm just confused, scared, or paranoid. But yeah, I just wanted to do this episode mainly to, you know, remind artists about their vulnerability and to encourage more artists out there to develop power over their weed use, so we don't end up like all of those famous artists who are super famous and manage to get fines or reduced sentences, or, you know, a slap on the wrist for their marijuana use, you know, because at the end of the day, your bad habits, you know, no matter how innocent or simple they may seem, they can be used against you in this world. And that's why I think it's so important to develop your power over weed. I may do another episode in the future about spirituality and marijuana use, you know, because I do think as far as using it for ceremony purposes or big spiritual transitions or big energetic releases, that it can be so beneficial. But again, as long as you have that power to go extended periods without weed, especially if it pertains to your livelihood and having to travel and having to perform, I think that puts you in a better standing than needing that to be with you all the time and to enhance your performance, to alleviate your anxiety, you know. And again, this is coming from someone who has used it for all of those purposes, but recognizes that at the end of the day, just like everything else in this world, we have to have power over our use of these substances in terms of our mental and physical health. That's all for this episode. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Donate to this channel. And again, I want to say thanks for supporting me, but please, please be sure to check out my episode that I did on creative consciousness expansion. I'm sharing my theory and alternative perspective to mental health disorders in relation to artists, and it's really important spiritual information that I'm trying to get out there, so be sure to check that out. And I'll see you next time, sleepyheads. Bye.